Have you been trying to compare wedding packages at the all-inclusive resorts throughout Mexico and the Caribbean? Are they all starting to look a little bit the same and blur together? If so, you are not alone. I'm Shelli, owner and destination wedding travel expert with Romance Travel Group. In this video, we are going to dive into wedding packages and learn what makes them different, what's included, and what's not. I will answer the 10 most commonly asked questions and go over some that are often overlooked but play a super important role in choosing the resort, choosing the package, and your overall wedding experience. Let's get started. Question 1, how do wedding packages actually work and what's included versus what's not included? So, resorts build wedding packages to give couples a foundation to start planning their wedding with. Almost all resorts offer some kind of a complimentary package or a free package, and those free packages are going to include the basics you need in order to host your wedding at that resort. So think of like a standard venue. Maybe it's the beach, maybe it's a gazebo. They will also typically include seating for your guests, possibly a semi-private dinner at one of their restaurants, and maybe even a bouquet or a boutonniere for the wedding couple. Resorts also offer a variety of upgraded wedding packages for you to choose from. And the upgraded packages start to get into things like a private cocktail party, a private dinner reception, additional spa services or salon services that would include hair or makeup for the couple. They also will include possibly some kind of entertainment, extra hours, all of these extra items that you can choose to have included with your wedding day. There's no right or wrong way to choose a package. A lot of it just comes down to what you need and what your vision is. It also may come down to how many guests you have attending, what your budget is, and just what your overall wedding vibe is going to be. So what exactly is a semi-private dinner versus a private dinner reception? This is a very common question. So a semi-private dinner is simply a reservation at one of the resort's restaurants where your wedding guests can come have a meal with you after the ceremony, but you will be sharing the space with other resort guests who are dining in that restaurant also. So it's not completely private. Typically, resorts don't allow you to do decor, music, speeches, dancing, all of the typical reception activities, because you are in one of the restaurants and there are other guests dining at the same time. So on the other hand, a private reception is just that. It is a private space. It is tables, chairs, servers, food, drinks, all the decor, everything set up just for your wedding. There would be no other resort guests attending because it's a private event. Here is where you can do the decor, the dancing, the music, the speeches, all the traditional elements that you think of when you think of a wedding reception, you can do when it comes to a private reception. So here's a big tip. A lot of wedding packages will include a semi-private dinner reservation. If you choose to upgrade to a private, doesn't mean that you necessarily lose the semi-private. So ask your wedding coordinator if you can plug in that reservation at some other point during your wedding events and use it as maybe a welcome reception or a welcome dinner or even a farewell brunch. So ask your wedding coordinator where else you can plug that in just so you don't lose it. How customizable are wedding packages, and can couples negotiate the items that are included? So wedding packages most often are what you see is what you get. Most resorts are not going to negotiate on the items that are included. So for example, resorts typically wouldn't allow you to remove cake in order to add extra florals. So just remember, what you see is what you get when it comes to most wedding packages. However, couples are able to fully customize their own package by adding on to items in addition to what the package comes with already. Extra items that you can customize with might include extra hours of events, some fun entertainment for your guests to be part of during the reception, extra florals, anything that brings a special touch or a nod to your personality in a way that will customize the wedding to make it feel even more like you. All right, question 4. What should couples look for when comparing wedding packages? So it's important to know that a lot of these wedding packages are really quite similar, even though they look totally different when you start to look at them and compare. For complimentary packages specifically, it's important to know how you qualify for that package itself. There's typically two different ways that resorts get you to qualify for a free package. The first is to qualify by reaching a minimum number of room nights. And what I mean by this is having enough guests stay at the resort for enough number of nights to reach the minimum. The other way is for the couple to stay in a specific room category for a specific number of nights and get you to qualify for the free package that way. So one way or another, resorts typically have you qualify to reach that free package. The upgraded wedding packages can look wildly different when you first start looking, which makes it so overwhelming and confusing. But after you get past the surface and really start to compare these packages, they're really all the same. And at the end of the day, end up costing couples about the same after all the planning is said and done. So here's a tip. Instead of choosing a resort based on the wedding package, set the wedding package aside for a little bit and focus on the resort and what it has to offer for the whole vacation experience. Look at things like the pools, the beach, the restaurants that are at the resort. What are the rooms like? Are they modern? Is it authentic? All these different things play a part in choosing a resort that fits your specific vibe and matches the aesthetics that you're going for your wedding. Once you've kind of figured out the top 2 or 3 resorts that you think would be a good fit, then you can bring the wedding package back in, layer that on top of everything else, and use the wedding package to really fine tune and get to the top resort that's going to be the best match for your wedding. All right, question 5. We're halfway there. How do RSVPs affect the wedding package, and what happens if a couple goes over or falls short of what they're expecting for their wedding guests? So, wedding packages typically include a set number of guests within the package that you pay for as part of the package. Now, this is a really, really big misconception. When you see a package that includes 20 people or 30 people or 40 people, all that means is that's the number of guests that you're paying for that are included with that wedding package. It doesn't mean that you can't go over 20, 30, or 40. It just means that you would have to pay for those guests who exceed 20, 30, or 40. So I hope that clears that up because we get this question a lot. If you go over the number of guests included with the package, resorts typically allow you to pay per person for each additional guest. The cost that you pay really depends on the package itself and how elaborate or how many inclusions you have within the package. But on average, we see about $100 per guest to about $200 per guest as the extra guest cost. Some resorts will max out on the number of guests they will allow you to add. And if that happens, resorts will typically force you up into the next package if it includes more guests. So be aware of what the restrictions are as far as guest count in the package you're looking at, and know when you're going to be pushed to that next package if you exceed the number of guests you're inviting. So here's a really important tip. Typically, we see about 50% of invited guests actually traveling. So this means instead of using your whole guest list to get estimates and pricing for your wedding, it's better to use your travel list and only count those guests who you think will travel when you're getting prices and planning out your whole wedding. Question 6. How much do packages typically cost for a group of 50 guests? And what can couples expect at different price points? So this is a great question. As we talked about, resorts often start with a complimentary package, and it usually covers the basics, including a ceremony site, maybe it's the beach or a garden or a gazebo, and basic chairs for your guests. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles, but again, it's that starting point or that foundation for you to build upon to create the custom package that you're looking for. At the $5,000 range, resorts will often include some kind of a dinner, most likely a semi-private, but you could get into a private event at that price point. They're going to typically include a boutonniere and a bouquet for the wedding couple, chairs for your guests, maybe a champagne toast and a piece of cake. We're starting to get into a little bit more of the inclusive package where you have more of those elements that you would normally want to have in your wedding package. At the $10,000 range, now we're really getting into a fully inclusive package. We're talking private cocktail parties, private dinner receptions, some decor, flowers for the bride and groom. Maybe it's a boutonniere and a bouquet, possibly some spa or salon services where you have bridal hair, bridal makeup, definitely chairs and some decor for your guests. This package is really meant to be fully inclusive and include the food, the drink, the tables, the chairs, the servers, the bartenders, all the elements that you really need to host a fully inclusive destination wedding event. Now, finally, at the $20,000 range, now we're really getting into more of the customized package. At this range, we're including all the other elements that we've talked about, but couples are really customizing their wedding with live entertainment, extra florals, extra events, extra hours of entertainment, all these things that the couples really believe are important for their wedding experience. And they're adding a pop of customization or personality into their wedding. And even though the package itself isn't $20,000, when we add in all of those elements, that's what's pushing us up into that $20,000 plus range. Question 7. So what add-ons and upgrades really are important and worth it, and where can couples save some extra money? So for this one, I actually asked a bunch of our current wedding couples to see what they had to say. And I've got a list for you, and this is sometimes going above and beyond the package itself, but I thought they had some really great answers, and I want to share their answers with you. So first of all, what's worth the upgrade? First and foremost, couples said private events. Having a space and servers and food and drink to call your own during the wedding has been super important for couples and really makes the whole event feel special and unique to you because you can customize it and really show off your personality. Second, couples said a DJ, sound equipment is really important. They're the ones that keep the party moving and keep everyone on the dance floor all night. So you really don't want to skimp on a good DJ. And video and photography is also high up on the list. It's really important to have a team of video and photography pros that vibe with you, that get your style, and that you're really excited to work with. A lot of credit goes to these people for really producing some amazing, stunning wedding photos. Next is entertainment and activities. Things like fire shows and water drums and excursions and golfing and all of the things that make this different than just a typical vacation. You're there as a group, and it's really important for a lot of couples to have group activities because you're creating these memories together. So planning activities, entertainment, things to do together really just enhances the whole wedding experience. And not glamorous or sexy in any way, but private airport transportation. Let's face it, after a 4 to 5 hour flight, the last thing you and your guests want to do is sit in a bus for another 3 hours or so, dropping people off at resorts along the way to your wedding resort. So splurging on a private airport transfer where you are the only one in the vehicle, you're going straight to the resort without making any extra stops, is actually pretty high up on the list of things couples swear by. And I know personally, I won't travel without a private transfer. I know I'm a little bit of a travel snob, but that is one thing. High up on my list is a private transfer. All right, so those are the ways you can splurge. What about ways you can save money? So I asked the same question to the same couples, and here's what they told me. First and foremost, couples agreed that formal printed invitations were not necessary. And I agree with them. So when you think about this destination wedding, you are sending out your save the dates a full year before travel. Formal printed invitations really should go out 6 to 8 weeks before the wedding. However, guests are booked and paid in full, often 3 to 4 months before the wedding, which makes the formal printed invitation Not necessary, because your guests are already booked and paid and they know they're going to travel. So if you're going to cut budget items, a printed formal invitation that gets sent 2 months before the wedding is definitely something you can cut back on. Guest favors is another thing that came up on our list. As much as couples may think that walking into a resort, handing guests a welcome bag with all these trinkets and everything in it is a fun idea, and it is a fun idea. However, the logistics of getting all of those items to the destination through immigration, paying the tax on them, hauling the extra suitcases, you really got to question, is it all worth it? And is it something that your guests will appreciate and remember? Or is that money better spent on a memory or an excursion or an activity that you can do together? A couple other items that came up on the save money list are ceremony decor. Ceremonies typically are short and sweet. It's often windy, so try to minimize the amount of decor that you're spending on the ceremony. If you want a really dramatic look and feel for your wedding, focus that energy on the reception, where you're actually going to be spending several hours instead of 20 minutes on a ceremony location. One other controversial thing that came up is a wedding planner. Now, don't hate me for this, but between the travel agent managing the room block, guest questions, guest payments, guest reservations, and kind of overseeing the whole process, and the wedding coordinator at the resort who handles venues, vendors, all of the payments and everything for the wedding, couples are really questioning if there's a need to hire an outside wedding planner or a third person to help them plan their wedding. It's a completely personal choice, and it really kind of comes down to how hands-off you want to be or how elaborate your wedding plans are. But a lot of couples have chosen to forgo the extra cost of the wedding planner and trust the travel agent and the wedding coordinator at the hotel to pull everything together for them. So totally up to you. It's just a very personal decision. My final advice here is to invest in the things that are going to enhance your guest experience and your wedding experience. Guests won't notice every little detail, so it's important to really put your focus and your budget on the items that are going to really wow your guests and to be memorable, and also things that you can take pictures of and remember for years to come. Question 8. What should couples watch out for in the fine print of wedding packages? So first and foremost, and I can't stress this enough, read everything. Read the contract so you are familiar. Grab a highlighter, highlight areas that you're unfamiliar with or that you have questions with. But definitely read the contract first. One thing to be on the lookout for is the wording of symbolic ceremony or legal ceremony. And there is a big difference when it comes to what kind of ceremony you're having. Most resorts are including a symbolic ceremony, and symbolic means that there is nothing legal about the ceremony in the destination. Most of our couples, probably over 90%, are doing a symbolic ceremony in the destination. This saves money, saves stress, and just makes the whole process so much easier. The legal ceremony then would take place back at home. Couples are either doing a small, very private ceremony, maybe they're going to the courthouse, but they're filing the legal paperwork at home, so they don't have to do that in the destination. And this is really important because of all of the added costs, stress, requirements, laws, and rules that would have to apply to have a legal ceremony in the destination. Another thing to look for in the wedding package has to do with outside vendors. So first of all, what is an outside vendor? An outside vendor is someone that you hire that lives in that destination that would be coming to the resort to offer their services for you. So for example, you're getting married in Cancun. You found an awesome wedding photographer that lives in Cancun that you want to come onto the property to take photos for you for your wedding day. That would be considered an outside vendor. And why I mention this is because resorts are getting really strict with their outside vendor policies. In order to have that vendor come into the resort, you would need to pay an outside vendor fee. And I've seen those outside vendor fees anywhere from $500 up to $3,000 per vendor per service. So before you go shopping for vendors and falling in love with the work of one photographer or florist, you really want to read the fine print to see if A, the resort will allow an outside vendor, and B, if they do, how much that outside vendor would cost. So one last thing about venues is being aware of limitations of some of the venues due to the natural wildlife in the area. For example, in Akamal, they are unable to do beach weddings certain times of year because the turtles are nesting. So it's really important that you are aware of the specific details that you're looking for your wedding and what the resort can and cannot offer. Question 9, are there any special considerations for LGBTQ plus couples? So this one is pretty easy. As long as you choose the right destination and the right resort, no, planning a same-sex wedding is exactly the same experience as planning any other kind of wedding. It's really important to have the destination and the resort right, and a good destination wedding travel expert will work with you and make sure that you're choosing wisely. All right, we made it to question 10. Thank you for hanging in there with me. This question is so important, but it really does get overlooked. Resorts don't talk about it. This information isn't typically published anywhere for couples to see, so you can't really compare it like you can packages, but it really is important and impacts the overall wedding planning experience. So question 10 is, how do room blocks impact the overall wedding planning process, and what perks and amenities can you earn by having a room block? So first of all, a room block is a contracted room group, and it is holding a set number of rooms at a locked-in price with a list of perks and amenities that you as the wedding couple will earn based on how many rooms are booked into that block. So these are perks you earn. The perks don't go to your guests, they come back to you. So for example, if you have an amenity that says you will earn one free room for every 10 rooms booked, the value of all of those free rooms earned will come back to you, typically after travel, but you can use that money to reimburse yourselves for the trip or for the wedding expenses themselves. So it's not unheard of for our couples to earn several $1,000s cash back after their wedding, and they're using that money to either pay for their trip or to reimburse themselves for some of the cost of the wedding. Other perks include spa services, anniversary nights, room upgrades, a honeymoon package. The list can go on, but all of these perks and amenities are listed in your room block contract and not in the wedding package, which is why we say they're in addition to and not in place of. So you actually get both, and it's important to understand how they work together. Wedding packages are a really helpful starting point, but as we've seen, they're just a small part of a much bigger picture when it comes to planning your wedding. Understanding what's included, what's not, what costs more, and what you can and cannot do with a package is super helpful and will help you planning in the long run. And remember, it's important to compare resorts for what the resort has to offer as a vacation experience. Set the wedding package aside for the time being. Focus on the resort so you choose a vacation resort that's suitable for your entire group. I really hope this video has helped understand what packages can and can't do for your wedding. I'm glad you stuck with me till the end. I hope you have found it helpful, and happy wedding planning. Thanks for watching.